Well, shalom and blessings. Welcome to Voice of Messiah Ministries, and we thank each and every one of you who have chosen to tune in with us and to hear us provide teaching on this day. Today we're going to be dealing with the subject of understanding the Sabbath, and we're going to look at part one of this as we deal with the series of teachings on this subject. Many in the Christian world today look at the Sabbath as something that is passé, something that is, I guess, more so associated with the Jews, if I'm to use that terminology, and it's primarily due to how the Catholic system has presented the concept of the Sabbath, and also historically making changes to the actual original Sabbath. And today what we're going to do is look at what the scriptures reveal to us about the Sabbath, and later on in another teaching we'll deal more with the history as far as historical changes that took place, which has brought many people within the framework of Christianity to view the Sabbath as something that is not connected to the Christian faith. And so what we want to do, we want to look first of all at the scriptures and develop a sound foundation regarding the Sabbath. And then we're going to combine this information in another teaching with the history regarding the Sabbath, its practice, certain things that were changed, councils that instituted changes in the Sabbath from the seventh day of the week unto the first day of the week. And we'll get into all of that. But today we just want to simply look at what the scriptures reveal to us. And as we do that, we want to go to Genesis. Bereshit is the Hebrew name for the book Genesis, book of beginnings. And we want to see where the Sabbath came into its existence. That's what we first of all want to look at here. So, let's go to Genesis chapter 2. And we're going to look at the first couple of verses of Genesis chapter 2. Genesis 2, verses 1 through 2. And this particular verse basically deals with the end of the creation. And we're going to see that after the Most High had finished creating everything, it says that he set the seventh day as being set apart. Now, let's just go to it as we read. And it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, or sanctified it, or set it apart, made it special, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation." So here we find at the end of creation, before man had the opportunity to disobey the Most High and sin, that the Sabbath was now built into the order of things as it related to the Most High creating everything. So a part of the order of creation, we have the Sabbath. The Sabbath wasn't an afterthought. It was something that the Most High built into the creation framework. So now, man, being created on the sixth day, has a seventh day in which he is to now live and rest and fellowship with the Father. Now, be able to confirm those statements that I just made, we need to look at something that Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah, made when he talked about the Sabbath. And we want to look at Mark 22, verse 27, the Messiah made a statement, and he said this: the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. So what we get from this that Messiah stated is that initially when the Most High created the Sabbath, we call it the Shabbat in Hebrew, that although he set it apart, made it special from all of the other days that he had made, because all of the other days, from the first day to the sixth day, he said that everything that he made was good. Those days were good. But the seventh day, it says that he set it apart. He made it special, hallowed it, sanctified it, separated it. So from the onset, the Sabbath has always been a special day, according to the creative order of things as it relates to the Most High. For on it he rested. And now Messiah Yeshua, who we believe to be the one that created everything, because the scriptures teach us that Elohim by wisdom created all things. We're told that Yeshua is the wisdom of God, that Yeshua created everything, and in creating all things, he created the Sabbath. So here we have God in the flesh, in the person of Yeshua, and he says that the Sabbath was not made for man to just submit to. He said, but the Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. Let me correct that. Showing that the whole purpose of the Sabbath was to serve the purpose of man, being a day of rest, being a day of reflection, being a day of fellowship with the Father. And since man and God have fellowship one with another, then it's quite likely that the Sabbath was created for man to rest, relax, cease from all his activity, and fellowship with the Father. As Messiah said, it was made for man. Another thing we want to note about the Sabbath is that it's the only day the Most High has set apart, made special, blessed it, separated it. And that means a whole lot, because what we find here is that the seventh day of the week, from the perspective of the Most High, is not to be looked at as a normal, regular day of the week. There's some who have the idea, at least within the framework of Christian circles, where they'll say, well, your Sabbath is this day, and your Sabbath is that day, and my Sabbath is this particular day, when we talk about finding a day of rest. But the Most High reveals to us that the Sabbath is not my Sabbath for me to choose any day of the week. The Most High said that the seventh day is set apart, it is special, and it is different from all of the other days of the week. And it was not done as a means of trying to say, well, we'll make a day special because man has sinned and now man has to have a day of rest from his work. No, but it was built into the framework of creation. This is what the Most High instituted as a part of creation and is to exist throughout eternity. In other words, this is the purpose and the plan of the Most High. It's one of his appointed times, set apart days. And so we find here that the Sabbath is to be respected as being special, not because I as a human being consider it special, and not because the religious framework or religious organization that I or anyone else might be a part of deems it to be special, but the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, it is special because the Most High himself, read the text of Scripture, the Most High himself set this day apart and made this day special, separate from all of the other days of the week. So number one, what we need to do is honor the specialness, the sacredness of the seventh day. Because the Most High set it apart, then we also should regard it as being set apart. And so we find here that the Most High set it apart. It is special. We find also that it was made for mankind. The special day, the seventh day of the week, was made for mankind to enjoy, so that it might be a delight for him. Now, the next thing we want to look at has to do with the fact that the Sabbath was known by men on the earth, and it was revealed before it became a commandment. You know, most of us, when we think about the Sabbath, we say, well, the Sabbath was given to the Israelites as part of the covenant, and we see that in Exodus chapter 20 as it is listed as one of the commandments. But what we find is that the Sabbath was already known by mankind. The Sabbath had already been revealed to mankind prior to it becoming a part of the commandments with the first covenant. Now, what is this where we know that the Sabbath was known by mankind? And I'm going to take this outside of what we call the canonized scriptures. But if we read in the book of Enoch, which was a book that was used by the early believers, although the book of Enoch was not canonized per se, in these scriptures that we have, the book of Enoch was used and was accepted and was embraced by the ancient first century believers. How do you say we know that? Well, because in the writings of Jude, in the writings of Peter, they quote from the book of Enoch, where they quote the prophecies of Enoch. So the book of Enoch has always been in existence. It has been passed down through the centuries. But the thing about it is that when the Catholic system came on the scene, they chose not to include this book as part of the canonized books. But if you look at some of the churches of the East, in particular, if you look at the Eastern churches, the Ethiopian church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, they include the book of Enoch as part of their canon of Scripture. And so I wanted to say all of that just to provide some justification as to why I'm using the book of Enoch and information in there which speaks about the Sabbath. The book of Enoch, when it talks about man departing from the way of righteousness and angels coming down and cohabitating with women, it talks about the fact that there was a Sabbath that men kept, that they kept the Sabbath, and they had departed from it and from all of the other things that had been revealed to man. Because the Most High revealed all of these things to mankind. Not only the commandments, all of the commandments that had been given on Mount Sinai, that was already known by Adam and his descendants. When Adam had eaten of the fruit, he had a knowledge of everything that was good and everything that was evil just as well. But in having a knowledge of all that was good, he had a knowledge of the commandments of God. For we are told that the commandments of God, the Torah, is good. And so Adam also had a knowledge of all that was good. He had a knowledge of God's teachings, his Torah, and his Sabbath. But in the book of Enoch, it talks about the Sabbath. Now also, the revelation of the Sabbath that we find in the canonized scriptures that we call canonized scriptures. We go to the book of Exodus. In the book of Exodus, we look at the 16th chapter. And if you read the entire 16th chapter, the chapter is talking about when the Israelites, I call the ancient fathers, when they had came out of Egypt. This was 1 month after the Exodus. And they were complaining about food, not having food to eat. The Most High said that he would rain down manna from heaven, and also that he would give them quail in chapter, when the Most High begins to talk about him giving the manna from heaven, he says that when you go out in the morning and you get the manna, he said, only get enough that you need for that day. He said, don't get too much. He said, just get what you need just for that day and that day alone. And so I want to go to it and read some of that in the 16th chapter of Exodus so that you'll be able to get the gist of this, because what we're leading up to is showing the revelation of the Sabbath. And so when you read in the, and I'm going to look at the, let's see, yes, I'm going to look at the fourth verse, yes, forgive me for taking so long, but in the fourth verse, it says, then Yahweh said to Moses, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. And it continues, in that way I will test them whether they will follow my instruction or not. Now look at verse 5. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days. Now there's a reason why the Most High said that on the sixth day they were to gather twice as much than just gathering only enough for the day. And the reason being is because the seventh day there would be no manna rain down, because the seventh day would be the Sabbath. Now, to justify what I'm saying, we're going to go a little bit further into this chapter. I don't want to read the whole chapter because it will be a bit lengthy. But we're going to go to verse 22 of the chapter, and it's going to provide a little bit more explanation for us here. In the 22nd verse of the same 16th chapter, it says, on the sixth day they gathered twice as much food, 2 omers apiece. When all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, he said to them, this is what Yahweh has commanded. Tomorrow is a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to Yahweh. Bake what you want to bake, and boil what you want to boil, and all that is left over put aside to be kept until the morning. Now, normally, if they were to store up more manna than what they were to have, the following morning there will be worms in the manna. In other words, it would have spoiled. It would have become rotten. But because on the sixth day the Most High said, go and gather 2 portions, enough not only for the sixth day, but enough also for the seventh day. Because on the seventh day, the Most High was not going to rain down any manna. So, let's look at this. What we find is that the Most High himself is also honoring the Shabbat, the Sabbath. Because the Most High said on the seventh day, he rests from all of his creative working. It's important that we catch this. The Most High sets a Torah, a teaching in place, and he abides by his own teaching that he sets in place. And at this particular time, while the Israelites were on their way journeying through the wilderness, it had just been 1 month after they have gotten out of Exodus from Egypt. They hadn't yet arrived at Mount Sinai just yet. This is chapter 16. When we get to chapter 19 and chapter 20, they're at the base of Mount Sinai, where the Most High will give the covenant and the commandments to the people. But what we find here is that the Most High reveals to the people that he has a holy Sabbath. Now, if he already had this holy Sabbath, this wasn't the beginning of his holy Sabbath. The holy Sabbath had been instituted at creation. So you want to think and ask yourself, well, well, if the Sabbath was instituted at creation and he's now revealing the Sabbath to the people, there's a reason why he's doing it. And the reason why he's doing it is because prior to this time, while the Sabbath had been in place as a fixed, eternal institution of the Most High, man had left God. He had abandoned the way of God, the way of Yahweh, and had turned to the worship of creation, the creation of the sun. He turned to the worship of the sun, the moon, the stars. He had worshiped to the creation of the earth, had become polytheistic, and had began to create their own Sabbath where they were honoring the sun god, which was the chief god within paganism, and had made the first day of the week their Sabbath because it honored their chief god, the sun. So when you look at the background of what was going on with man, man had abandoned the way of God and had forgotten the way of God. So with the developing of the covenant people, the Most High choosing Abraham and channeling that covenant through Isaac and Yaakov or Jacob, now with the formation of the covenant people, the Most High was in all actuality reinstituting within the framework of this covenant people all of his ways that man had forgotten about since creation. And so he says to them, I'm not going to rain down manna for you. And he's telling them why he's not going to give them manna on the seventh day of the week. Why? Because the Most High is still abiding by his own institution of the Sabbath. And the Sabbath hadn't yet become a commandment yet. But now the Most High had revealed it to them so that they were now aware of the Sabbath. So when they go out to go get their manna on the first 5 days of the week, they were only to get one portion for that day. Not more than, but just enough for that day to teach the people to trust the Most High. But then on the sixth day they were to gather 2 portions. God was training them to bring them into the Torah, to bring them into keeping of his ways. And so now on the sixth day they were to gather 2 portions so that they would have enough not only for the sixth day but enough for the seventh day, because on the seventh day there would be no manna out there on the ground for them to gather. So here we find that the Sabbath was already in place. It was already made known and revealed before it actually became a commandment. And this is something that we as believers need to understand about the Sabbath, that the basis for keeping the Sabbath is not because it was instituted as a mitzvah, a commandment within the framework of the first covenant, which is also a part of the Berit Hadashah, the new covenant, but the basis for keeping the Shabbat, or the commandment of the Sabbath, is because the Most High instituted it at creation. Not because it was made a commandment through Moses, but because it is a fixed mitzvah, it's a fixed commandment that the Most High instituted at creation, along with all of the commandments. And I'm not dealing with the foundation for all of Torah in this teaching. I'm just dealing with the Sabbath. And I'm just mentioning that the basis, the true basis for keeping and following the Sabbath is not because it was a part of the first covenant. Because this is the idea that most believers have. They feel that, well, that was a part of the law. We're not under the law. We're under grace. Well, see, before the written code of the Torah came through Moses, the Sabbath was already a fixed mitzvah. It was a fixed eternal commandment. It was a fixed institution by the Most High at creation. Because, as Yeshua said, the Sabbath was made for man, for Adam, was made for man, Adam. That's what the Sabbath was made for. And so the Sabbath came before Moses, before there was a Moses, before there was a mixed vote, a complete mixed vote, where the Sabbath was included in that, the Shabbat already existed. And this is the thing that we want to be mindful of when we look at these principles, these Torah concepts, these teachings, is that they predated the first covenant. Very, very important that we understand that. Because when we understand the basis of why we keep the commands of the Most High, it's not because it was given to Moses for the people of God to keep. It's because it's a part of the nature of the Most High and had been given at creation for mankind's living, his lifestyle of holiness that pleases the Father. It was something that was already known. Now we want to go ahead and look at the fact that the Shabbat, the Sabbath, was included as a commandment of the first covenant. If we look at Exodus chapter 20, and I'm going to wrap this up at this time, but we're going to look at Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 10. And as we look at that particular passage, something interesting, even in the statement that's made regarding the Sabbath, we find an interesting statement that the Most High makes. In verse 8, now notice what it says in verse 8, because in this verse, it connects us with the fact that the Sabbath was already in place. It says, remember the Sabbath day. Now, I'd already read to you where the Most High revealed to the ancient fathers the Shabbat, the Sabbath. Now here in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, we find the Most High giving the people the Sabbath officially as a commandment that is part of the first covenant. It says, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahweh your Elohim, your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the stranger, the alien, that's the person who's living in the land that has not yet taken the covenant, residing in your towns. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. So what we find here in the giving of the Sabbath as a command, that the Most High first of all tells the ancient fathers, remember the Shabbat, because he had already informed them about the Shabbat while they were journeying through the wilderness before they got to Mount Sinai. And then he reiterates what is stated in Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 2, that based upon the instituting of the Sabbath at creation, I want you to catch this now, that the Most High created everything in 6 days and on the seventh day rested. What the Most High does is he reiterates the foundation of the Sabbath being created. It started at the creation of all things. When he created everything, the seventh day came, he instituted the Sabbath. And he reiterates this within the framework of the covenant. That the basis for this is because it had already been set in place. So in essence, what the Most High was really doing was restoring what mankind had forgotten about by means of him going into idolatry, leaving the true path. The Most High in making covenant with the ancient fathers was in all actuality restoring what man through Adam had rejected, had left off. It wasn't something new. It wasn't something that the Most High was creating as a new religion trying to get us as his people to embrace his ways and walk in his ways and do that which he had put in Adam to do from the beginning. And when he gave the Shabbat, it's all a part of the keeping of his ways. And so I want to encourage you today to look again at the Sabbath. Look again at what the Most High has instituted. Because the Sabbath, although it was created for man, it belongs to the Most High. Because it is a Sabbath unto Yahweh, our Elohim, our God. And he wants us to embrace it, to keep it, and to celebrate it. We find also that it's a part of his appointed times. In Leviticus chapter 23, you read the first few verses. The first Moedim is the weekly Moedim called the Sabbath. Excuse me. And it is to be a holy convocation, a sacred time of gathering. And so I want to challenge you as a believer, if you haven't considered the Sabbath, look into the Sabbath. Look again at it. I know you've been told that that's under the law, it's passed away, but all that the Most High institutes remains forever, because the Most High does not change. But I want to encourage you to look into the Shabbat. For those of you who might be watching us for the first time and this information might be new to you, I hope that it has shed some light on the understanding of the Sabbath from a biblical perspective, that it has helped you to look again at the significance of the Sabbath, because it is important to the Most High, and it has always been kept by the ancient fathers and also by the Messianic Israel for the first 300 years from the time of Messiah's death. The first 300 years, Messianic Israel kept the Sabbath. And of course, in our next lesson and studies that are to come, we will talk about that in detail, and we will give you historical information to show you that historically the people of God continue to keep the Sabbath. But we trust that this information has been enlightening and encouraging. And for those of you who don't know Messiah Yeshua as Lord and Savior of your life, you have not turned from your way and given yourself to him. I want to challenge you to give your life to him. Yeshua is calling, and his mercy has been outstretched to the world, saying, "Come to me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Messiah wants to give you rest for your soul. The Sabbath teaches us the rest for our bodies and the connection with God, and all wrapped up in Messiah is this rest for our souls. There's many out there that are struggling, and who are depressed, and who are oppressed, and who are incarcerated by the bondage of sin and by the consequences of sin that have come upon your life. It just seems that life has just given you a raw deal, and you're looking for peace. You're looking for rest. I want to tell you, you need to come to Yeshua, and he will give you the rest that you are looking for. He'll give you the peace that you are searching for. Turn from your way. Return to the Most High, and Messiah Yeshua will give you that rest. He'll do it in your life. Well, we thank each and every one of you for watching, and trust that this has been a blessing to you. And for those of you who would like to have more information about Voice of Messiah Ministries, we would invite you to go to our website at www.ncmmi.20m.com. Please view our website. We have some links, NCMMI links, and you can go to the written word library link, where you can be able to read articles that we have available, and also we have free biblical studies that day. Shalom.